Hari Om.
Hari Om.
So we are told throughout the Bhagavad Gita that all actions leave an impression in our minds. All actions, regardless of whether they are good or bad, spiritual or secular, it doesn't matter. All actions leave an impression in your mind, and those impressions are called vasanas. These vasanas have a tendency to repeat itself. So the vasanas prompt you to repeat the same action over and over again. The more we repeat those actions, the deeper the vasanas get. And the deeper the vasanas, the more likelihood that those actions are the ones that will be manifest more often. So therefore we can see when an action is performed, as you all know, there is a result or a consequence. If I indulge in an action to acquire a certain thing, the result is that I get the reward of my action. So the rewards of our actions are not only material, but as we can see, it is psychological as well. So there are consequences, both material as well as psychological. And the quality and texture of these impressions or the vasanas determine what kind of a life we are going to have. For example, at the time of death, when we die, the quality and texture of our vasanas that we have accumulated up to that point would determine the kind of body that we are going to take again and the environment that we are going to be born in. That's determined by the vasanas. Now, this obviously, and it had been described in the last discourse, if the vasanas are good, then you are born into higher realms where you enjoy happiness and peace. If your vasanas are bad, then you go into lower wombs, like you become lesser beings like animals. These are not punishment, these are consequences. If your vasanas are mixed, like good and bad, like most of us have, then we are born again in this world of ours, and the cycle repeats itself. So, as you can see, it is the vasanas that determine our entire scheme of life, so to speak. Now, since everything seems to depend on our actions, Arjuna had this legitimate doubt. So he asked Lord Krishna, if everything depends on my actions, tell me in detail, what does this action constitute? What constitutes an action? So the Lord explained in great detail. And he says, there are 5 causes for every action. And these 5 causes have to be there for any action. And what are these 5 causes? Number 1, you need to have a body to have an action. That is obvious. Without the body, how can I perform any actions? This is the gateway for me to get input from the outside and also to respond. So therefore, a body is necessary. That's the number 1 cause. Now, just having a body alone does not guarantee that you will be able to act. Why? Because when you are in deep sleep or when you are unconscious, your body is there, but there is no action coming out of that body. So, in addition to the body, one needs a driver, so to speak, and that is the ego. So a body is necessary, The second factor is the ego. And the ego is the karta, or the one who does the actions, who prompts the body into doing actions. So those are the first two factors. And the third one is the organs of perception. You can have the body and you can have the ego, but if you don't have these 5 organs of perception, called the 5 senses, the jnana indriya, through which we receive the entire world into us. Through my eyes, I get all the input regarding the shapes and size and color of things. Through my ears, I hear all the sounds that are in the world, and so on and so forth. Eyes, ears, tongue, skin, and the 5 organs of perception: the eyes, ears, smell, tongue, and touch. So these are the 5 sense organs. These organs of perception are necessary. Without that, I would not be able to receive the stimuli so that I can respond. The fourth are the organs of action. So now that I have received the input from the world, how does my body respond to that? Vedanta says there are 5 points at which this body responds to external stimuli. Those are the speech, the hands, legs, genital organs, and the anus. These are the 5 points through which our responses to the world are given. And the last one are the devas, or the deities that preside over each one of these senses. Because I can have my eyes, but if there is no faculty of seeing, and that is called the deva, the indriya that is involved in seeing. So I may be fast asleep and my eyes are there, but I am not seeing anything because the faculty of seeing is not functional at that time. Like that for all 5 senses. So these are the 5 factors that are necessary for any action. The body, the ego, the organs of perception, organs of action, and the 5 faculties of senses. These 5, if any one of them is missing, no action is possible. Now, all actions by the body, speech, and mind, good or bad, these are the 5 causes and they are absolutely necessary. Now, the Atman, the eternal actionless self, identifying with the ego, driven by desires in the intellect, acts on, forgetting its true nature, and seeks gratification from the OET. So all these factors are there for actions. And yet you and I know that all these factors are inert matter. This body is an inert matter. Our mind is an inert matter. Ego is an inert matter. Organs of perception, organs of action, these are all belong to the category of matter, and matter is inert. And yet they all act dynamically and actively only because of the presence of the enlivening force behind. And that's the Atman, the self. Now the Atman, the self, is not the one who is actually acting. It is like the example of the gas in a car. If not for the gas, the car won't move. So because of the presence of the gas, the car is able to move. If the car meets with an accident, can you say that the accident was caused by the gas? The gas was not the one that caused the accident. It gave you the necessary impetus to move. But what you do with that movement is up to you. In the same way, these 5 factors are there, the inert matter, and they are acting only in the presence of Atman, the self. So one can argue, so if somebody is acting, it is the Atman that is acting. Because if not for the Atman, then the person won't be acting at all. Just like the car won't meet with an accident if not for the gas. So the Atman, because of its presence and identification with this inert matter, appears to be the one who is involving in our daily activities, where we are going after sense pleasures and seeking gratification from this external world. It seems as if the Atman is the one that is going after us. In actual fact, it is not. The 5 factors are inert and belong to matter, but in the presence of the spirit, they act and go through disappointments and failures, joys and successes. The ordinary mind misunderstands the Atman as the doer and comes to despair. So an ordinary mind thinks that it is because the Atman is the one that is doing all that, and since the Atman is doing it, it must be a helpless being. So he has no faith in a higher power because of that misunderstanding, and therefore he despairs when there are problems in life. The cause for this misunderstanding are 2. Untempered reason called akirta buddhi and perverted mind called durmati. These are 2 technical terms anyway in Sanskrit. The reason why there is this distorted perception in our mind that it is the Atman that is causing that, because of untempered reasoning, meaning the mind is not trained to think logically and analyze the facts and see that it is not the Atman that is doing the actions. And the other is durmati, which is the perverted mind, where our mind has this capacity to pervert and distort reality. And why do these 2 disturbances come in our mind? Because of the lack of integration between the mind and the intellect. Now you know these 2 are divided. They are all thoughts. Both mind and intellect are thoughts. They are divided into 2 separate categories, the mind and the intellect, based on the function. When the thoughts are having to do with your emotions and feelings, it's called the mind. When the thoughts are having to do with ideas, plans, and planning and actions, that's called the intellect and discrimination. Now, when the mind and intellect are functioning together, meaning the intellect has a brilliant idea and it is a good idea, but the mind refuses to cooperate. Like so many times, the mind wants to do something that is bad and the intellect says, don't do it. But we overrule the intellect and go ahead and do it anyhow. There is a discrepancy or a discoordination between the mind and intellect, and that's called the disintegrated faculty. So when the mind and intellect are working together, whatever the intellect says, that's what the mind does. If the intellect says don't do it, the mind won't do it. If it says go ahead, the mind will do it. That's the integrated mind. So we have these misconceptions and all the misunderstandings only because our mind and intellect are not integrated together. And they give the example of the Rasa Krida, in one of the folklores. Lord Krishna was playing the flute by the Jamuna banks in the night. He, in his own feelings of bliss, was playing the flute and enjoying and was immersed in that melody of the flutes that he was playing. The gopis who were in their respective homes heard this music And when they heard this enchanting music, they left all their household chores and came running towards the music, where the music is. And when anybody is happy, the common human response is to dance. So when they found Lord Krishna playing this divine music, they were so enchanted and happy that they started dancing around him. And when they were dancing around him, it appeared as if Lord Krishna was also dancing with them, because he is in the middle and the gopis are dancing around him. And in actual fact, the Lord was there static, engrossed in his own bliss, playing the melodious music. But it is the gopis who were dancing around. So in the same way, that example is given only to show us that at all times, in all our actions, the Atman, the Self, is ever steady and in a state of bliss. All actions are happening around him in his presence. The Lord says that one who is not egoistic and whose intellect is not tainted by false values of possessions, acquisitions and aggrandizement, such a person, even though while acting, accrues no vasanas. So the Lord says, if one has no egoistic feelings and has gotten rid of all the sense of doership, but yet, as long as a person is alive, they act. The example are the spiritual masters, our Gurudev and those kind of realized masters. They have realized that they are nothing but the Lord himself. But yet, with the realization, their life does not end. They are still functioning out in the world because they are still alive. But when they are acting out in this world, such people who have no ego and no misconceptions in their mind, their actions will not accrue any vasanas, will not make them have any vasanas. And even while actions are going around them and through them, they are not actually responsible for them, because it is not done with any selfish, egoistic tendencies. And the Lord says, even if they kill, they are not killing, and that killing does not cause any negative vasanas in them. As you remember, the scenario is here that that Arjuna didn't want to fight the war because he didn't want to kill his own kith and kin who are on the enemy lines. And Lord Krishna is now giving this entire discourse of these 18 chapters to convince Arjuna that it is not, that when he acts without ego and without any selfish desires, whatever he does, even if it is killing his own kith and kin, is not a quote sin, or it would not leave any negative impressions in his mind. Having explained what action is, the Lord now talks about the impulse to action. So this is an exhaustive explanation of what constitutes an action. Now the next question would be, what propels us into action? What is the impulse for action? And the Lord again analyzes that and says, all impulses to action are constituted of the three things. Having explained, he says now the impulses of action, which is called the karma chodana, and they are that which propels the actions, and they are in a threefold arrangement: the knower, the known, and the knowledge. The knower is me. The known is what is happening out there. And when I act in the environment, I get as a result the knowledge. So the knower and the known, and the end result is knowledge. In the same way as an experiencer, I am the experiencer. What I am experiencing is called the experienced, what is being experienced. So experiencer and the experienced, and what happens or what the result of that is the experience. So these three factors, this arrangement is the impulse to action. And again the Lord says the impulse to action can spring from the experiencer. The motivation to act or the impulse to act can come from the experiencer in the form of a desire. So I get a desire to do something. So that is one of the impulse to action. Or the motivation can come from the experienced, the environment, in the form of a temptation. Something that is very attractive, wanting me to go after it. So it's a temptation. That's in the experienced. Or in the experience itself, in the form of memory. That experience that once I had before, which was very pleasurable. And that was my experience. That memory of that experience will tempt me to action again. So these three factors are the ones that are called karma chodana, or the one that propels you into action. The impulse to act must find a field to act. And that is called the basis of action. And that consists of the actor, the instruments, and the reaction. The ego that has the desire is the actor. The desire is maintained by the picture of the fruits which it wants to gain. And the instruments needed are the organs of perception, organs of action, mind, intellect, and thus, if it wants to gain, the instruments needed are the organs of action. So therefore, what is the basis of action are the karta, karma, and the karana. Karta is the doer. What is the basis of action? The doer is necessary. The karma is the one that you do, and in order to do that, the karma, one must have an idea as to what that karma is going to give me. What is the goal that I am trying to reach, and that will be the basis for that. And in order to do this action, I need certain instruments. Those instruments are not only the organs of perception and the organs of action, but also the mind and intellect. Now, in spite of all these actions and all the things that have been explained, you and I know that everyone acts differently. Why is it that there are so many differences? Each one of us act differently to the others given the same environment and circumstances. It is because of the presence of the three gunas, or the three moods of the mind. We have already explained that we have these three moods at all times in different proportions. The sattvic or the good, the rajasic or the passionate, and the dull or the tamasic. These three moods are present in us in different proportions at all times. The most predominant mood is the one that determines what we are at any particular moment. So at this moment, we are in a temple, so naturally we are in predominantly sattvic mood. There is no agitation or restlessness or any laziness or anything like that. So in these three moods, you can see you act differently depending on all that. So the Lord says, even this knowledge and the knower and the actions, He classifies them into the different moods. how can there be the three different kinds of knowledge? Sattvic knowledge, Rajasic knowledge, and Tamasic knowledge. So what is Sattvic knowledge? Knowledge meaning, whatever that you get. So what is this good knowledge that you are supposed to get? That good knowledge is that by which one sees the one unbroken Brahman in all the pluralities. That knowledge by which that you see all these many different things in this world, but in and through all that you see one common factor, and that is the presence of the Lord in everything. That knowledge is called Sattvic knowledge. For example, electricity is one, and there are many different kinds of bulbs. There could be a fluorescent bulb, there could be an incandescent bulb, blue bulb, a red bulb, red, yellow bulb, and the light that comes out of each one of those bulbs is different. But in and through all that, there is one electricity. The electricity is one, but the manifestations are different. The ocean is the same, but the waves are different. There's a small wave, there's a large wave, there's a ripple, there's a bubble. They are all different in shape, and they have different periods of existence, but they are all nothing but the ocean. Now, what is a Rajasic knowledge? Rajasic knowledge is scientific knowledge, the knowledge of something, all the sciences that we have, because intellect can only see differences. Anything that we see, now you look at this whole world, you can see the trees, you can see the sand, the bricks, the building. How come we are able to see? Because with our intellect, we see only these differences. But to know the oneness behind it, you need the wisdom. The intellect sees only differences. Now there are many Puranic stories to describe everything, and one of the Puranic stories that the Lord talks about is the Padmasura. There was a king called Padmasura. He was doing penance in the jungle, standing and doing meditation for months at a time, because he wanted something and he was doing penance. So after several months, Lord Shiva appeared before him and asked, "What do you need? What do you want?" And he said, "I want fire touch." So the Lord Shiva didn't know what this fire touch that he wanted. What he said was, so he said, "Let me explain to you. By fire touch meaning, if I touch somebody, that person should burn to ashes. That's my wish. Anyone that I touch with my finger, he should burn to ashes." So fantastic boon to get. So if I have an enemy, I invite him for dinner to my house, and when he comes I say hi, and when he shakes hand, boom, he disappears into ashes. So that's the boon he wanted. And Lord Shiva says, "Okay, you have it." But then the Padmasura said, No, don't be in a hurry. I've been doing this penance for so many months now. And just one afternoon you come here for 5 minutes and you say Tadastu. How do I know that you have not cheated me? How do I know that you have actually given me this boon? Now, in that whole wide jungle, it's only Padmasura and Lord Shiva. So if he wanted to test it, it has to test on Lord Shiva. Now Lord Shiva knows that he had already given the power to this guy. So he is going to touch me, meaning Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva started running. And this Padmasura was chasing him. And It's not like, running in this traffic, where you can go weave in and out of traffic. There is no traffic, so it's just jungle. He was running fast, he was going behind mountains and trees and so on. The king was chasing him. Now Lord Vishnu was going around and he saw what was happening. And the Lord Vishnu said, this boy is always in trouble, meaning Lord Shiva. He is always in trouble. But he is one of my cabinet ministers. So I have to go and help him. So when Lord Shiva had taken a turn around a mountain and the king was behind him, Lord Vishnu appeared in the middle like an old man. And when he saw the king, he said, Maharaj, why are you running? If you wanted something, all you needed was to order your soldiers and they would have chased you. Why are you running? And you look as if you are sick, because the man had been in the jungle for so many months doing penance. He had not eaten properly and he looked sick. So this Lord Vishnu went on and on saying, Lord, you need to rest and you relax, don't run, get one of your soldiers to run for you. So the king said, no, old man, that is not the case. You see, I was doing penance for all these months and Lord Shiva came before me and I asked for this boon and he gave me that boon. And I wanted. And when he said, I wanted, he touched himself. And he burnt himself to ashes. So Lord Vishnu was happy. He went and told Lord Shiva, you can stop running now. I've taken care of the problem. Now this is the mythological story to say that this Padmasura is equivalent to our mind, our intellect, which always wants to disintegrate, meaning divide things into different parts and not see the whole. That's the Rajasic kind of thinking. And the Tamasic kind of thinking is where that which clings to a single part effect and without reason thinks that is the whole. When you see something that is only a part of the thing, you think that is the whole. And no amount of reasoning will convince you. You say, no, I know it. Why? Because I saw this. I saw him doing something. And therefore, I think he is a bad man. And the explanation was given, no, that is not the reason why he was doing that, this is why, and so on. The Tamasic knowledge is that you will say, no, what I know is right, because I saw that, and that means this is it. So the part knowledge, and they think that is the whole. They are unreasonable, looking through confused intellect with fixed ideas, and fail to see things as they are, and project their ideas and judge others based on that. So this is the three kinds of knowledge. Now we'll talk about the other things in our next talk. Thank you.